I was supposed to like slow down and say that carefully. Otherwise, I could be in trouble. So, being a caterpillar, doing the work, eating, getting chubby, getting ready for the chrysalis, and then inside, I was saying I got the chubby down. I got the eating down too. Inside the chrysalis, this is now non-IPAs. We're working on ourselves. We're developing and growing and stretching, and a lot of times that is hidden from the outside world. It's something that's happening inside of us as we grow and blossom into this beautiful butterfly. And then the butterfly is our new self and the benefits of growing our business. Now we're going to talk about that stinking chrysalis. Because sometimes there are things that we need to leave behind. And so we're going to talk about discarding that stinking chrysalis that we were stuck in for so long. And I'm going to talk to you about trashing behaviors that do not serve us well. And y'all, so I remember when I was a consultant, Joellen was doing a training on emotional management, and she said they usually ask you to teach a class for one of two reasons. A, you're really bad at it, and you need the process, or B, you've mastered it. And I will tell you, this is an area that I am still growing in. This is not a strength zone for me, and so please know that this is a sermon to all of us. It is not just to you guys. So I want to start by reading 2 Corinthians 10, just the first few verses, and I'm reading a little bit more just because I want it to be in context. So Paul is the author of Corinthians, and he says, I, Paul, entreat you by the meekness and gentleness of Christ, who I am humble with when face to face with you, but bold toward you when I am away. I beg of you that when I'm present I may not have to show boldness with such confidence as I count on showing against some who suspect us of walking according to the flesh. So people are criticizing him, kind of behind his back. For though we walk in the flesh, we're not waging war against the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to obey Christ, being ready to punish every disobedience when your obedience is complete. Look at what is before your eyes. If anyone is confident that he is Christ, let him remind himself that just as he is Christ, so also are we. For even I boast a little too much of our authority, which the Lord gave for building you up and not for destroying you. I will not be ashamed. I do not want to appear frightening with my letters, for they say his letters are weighty and strong, but his bodily presence is weak. I always envisioned Paul as like this kind of puny guy with like little tiny beady glasses. I don't know why, but I always do, because he always talks about how he's like small and I forget exactly the phrases that he uses, but his bodily presence is weak. Like, I don't imagine Paul as this really big, burly guy. And his speech of no account, so probably not the most well-spoken person ever. Let such a person understand that what we say by letter when absent, we are practicing in present. Not that we dare to classify, and this is what I want you to focus on, not that we dare to classify or compare ourselves with some of those who are commending themselves. So we're not comparing ourselves with people who are saying we've got it all together. Because when they measure themselves by one another and compare themselves with one another, they are without understanding, or they are not wise. And so before I train on this, I want a pinky promise from everybody in here that we're not going to embrace shame and we're not going to embrace guilt in this. Understanding that, I think Nicole said in one of her trainings, that you are exactly where you are supposed to be right at this moment. That this is part of your story, this is part of your journey. God has you exactly where you are for such a time as this. And so shame says, I am bad. Shame is a focus on self, where guilt says, I have done something bad. Okay? And we're going to read both of those before we get started with trashing behaviors. And I want you to ask God to reveal to you the areas that you need to address and to give you the courage and the strength, not in yourself, but in Him, to do that. The first thing we're going to talk about is my pet behavior, procrastination. Procrastination defined as the avoidance of doing a task that needs to be accomplished within a specific timeline. Proverbs 27:1 says, do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. Proverbs 12:25 says, anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. Proverbs 12:25. Oh, Proverbs 27:1. My mom once told me that I wouldn't amount to anything because I was a procrastinator, and I said, just wait. Just kidding, my mom never said that. Procrastination is the number one form of self-sabotage. Procrastination is the number one or most common form of self-sabotage, and it is opportunity's assassin. So how do you know if you're a procrastinator? Well, this is definitely a not all-inclusive list, but probably a procrastinator knows that they're a procrastinator. I tell people, I don't like, remember we don't like personifying, right? So I say that I am a recovering procrastinator because it is definitely something I'm working on. So you might be a procrastinator if you've ever said, oh, I'm just a person who works well under pressure. That is a procrastinator in denial. You might be a procrastinator if you have a lack of commitment and you find yourself using what we call avoidance tactics. So I'll tell you, one of my avoidance tactics is watching cooking shows and cooking. If you hear that I have gone through a season or two of the British Baking Company, I'm probably procrastinating something that I should be doing right now. That is just one of my pet avoidance tactics. You also might be a procrastinator if you lack organization. Having a tidy space and creating systems helps you be more productive within the time that you do have to work. You also might be a procrastinator if you're easily distracted. And I'm not even kidding when I'm like, here's Caitie. And then fourth, you might be a procrastinator if you find yourself having a lack of passion or energy or mustering up the will to change. So what causes us to procrastinate? Well, probably the number one thing is fear. It stops a ton of people. Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of risk, of ridicule, of embarrassment, and that all wears the pretty mask of procrastination. Procrastination, though, has often sometimes been mislabeled as laziness, and it really isn't. It's fear. So call it by its right name and forgive yourself. Another thing that causes us to procrastinate is excessive perfectionism. Anybody guilty? I'm the oldest in a type A personality, and I actually uttered these words on more than one occasion. If I think I'll be bad at it, I don't even want to try. No one's relating to me. I'm just kidding. Procrastination is a symptom, though, of perfectionism. Because perfectionists fear being unable to complete a task perfectly, they put it off for as long as possible. And when we're the ones setting our deadlines and our goals to accomplish things that we want to in our business, it gets put off and put off and put off and put off and put off, and there's no end in sight. The higher the fear of failure and ridicule, the more perfectionists procrastinate. Another reason that might cause us to procrastinate is low energy levels. Let me be your friend and from personal experience tell you, if this is where you are living, you are not living in optimal health. And I'm not a nurse and I'm not a doctor and I do not pretend to be, but you may want to consider getting checked by your doctor. Deficiencies in magnesium, potassium, vitamin B12, and or folic acid can cause extreme fatigue, which makes you lack the desire to put your goals into action. And so it might be something where you authentically, and again, this is personal experience talking, where you really might just need to get checked out by your doctor. Another thing that causes us to procrastinate is a lack of focus. Know what your now tasks are. There's immediate things that are now and then things that are next. But sometimes we get so distracted by what is next that we fail to do what needs to be done right now. What is next will always look more interesting and will always look more important, and sometimes will often scream the loudest for our attention and distract us from what is really important, and that is what is right now. So there's a couple stages of procrastination. I'm going to go through these quickly. The first one is a false sense of security. This doesn't need to be done for a while. I have tons of time, and so I'm just going to take it easy. Sometimes we find ourselves in this position right after completing a goal or missing a deadline for a goal. So false sense of security. The second stage is laziness. Maybe I should get a head start. Nah. The third is excuses. I'm busy right now, and so I'm just going to take a short break. Fill in the blank. Needs to be done first. This is where I often get stuck, is in the excuses stage. Number 4 is denial. I still have tons of time, and if I need to, I'll just pull an all-nighter. That was me in college. The 5th one is crisis. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to procrastinate ever again. And stage 6 is repeat. How do we trash it? So how do we discard the chrysalis of procrastination? Well, the first one is to recognize that procrastination is fear, and then remind ourselves of 2 Timothy 1:7, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and of love and of self-control. Fear does not come from God, but it comes from the enemy. The second way that you can trash it is action. Action destroys procrastination. Move. The third way is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go method. If you have not read the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins, excuse her language, but she is a cool chick. She came up with the concept of 5, counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and not thinking, just doing and going. So counting backwards causes the brain to actually stop and think, and so stop thinking about procrastination or putting it off or why this is a bad idea. Using 5 and not just 3, we can do 3, 2, 1 without thinking about it. But to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 requires a little bit more brain process. And so that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 almost gives our brain just enough time to reset, but not to come up with a new excuse for why we shouldn't move. And so counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just going and doing. The fourth is identify your hiding place. I told you mine is cooking shows and cooking. I love to cook. I don't love to bake all that much, but I really love to cook. And I'm kind of innovative and creative in the kitchen, and so it is my hiding place. Number 5, use a timer. Joellen talked about 15 minutes. Journaling every 15 minutes. You'll find out you have a lot more time, and you'll find out that you're procrastinating and you're wasting time. Number 6, write down your 6 most important things for the next day and organize those in order of importance. The now, not the next. So what needs to happen first? Don't do the easiest thing first, do the hardest thing first. You guys have heard of a frog, right? Eat a frog for breakfast is the hardest thing either one of you will do all day. Number 7, embrace imperfection. I almost said embrace perfection. Woo. Embrace imperfection. Be okay with being bad at something. And be okay with being bad at something. All right, the second behavior that we're going to trash is comparison. Comparison is the death of all joy. Rachel Hollis added to it and said the only person you need to be better than is the one that you were yesterday. Comparison is the death of all joy. The only person you need to be better than is the one that you were yesterday. Comparing ourselves to others doesn't just steal our joy, though. It robs those around us of the rare gift of a woman who has learned to offer her uniqueness to the world. The reason comparison is so damaging is we are almost always comparing our beginning to someone else's middle, our blooper reel to someone else's highlight reel, our bloopers and our mess-ups and our worst to someone's picture-perfect, Instagram-filtered life. we're often focused on self-enhancement, and if that is your goal, comparing yourselves to other people will always make you miserable. How do I know if I compare myself to people? How do I know that this is a struggle of mine? Well, first, you might struggle to be genuinely happy for and enjoy the success of others. Second, you might spend an excessive amount of time on social media. Number one is you may struggle to be genuinely happy for and enjoy the success of others. Number two is you might spend an excessive amount of time on social media. 5 minutes while you're tinkling, rock on. That's why I said excessive. Number three, you probably feel inadequate in many areas of your life. Comparing yourself to your friends and your acquaintances. She's a better mom, she's a better wife, she's a better employee, she's a better Mary Kay consultant, she's a better friend, she's a better cook, she's a better housekeeper. The list goes on and on and on. Number four, you are overly critical of yourself and or others. And number five, you might be unwilling or unable to grow past a certain point. You kind of find yourself plateauing in the growth department. What causes me to compare myself to others? Well, the first thing is not understanding your worth and value in Christ. And probably the most important. And that is an area where so again, I'm going to be your friend. There are counselors who can help you with this. I think that a good biblically grounded friend can help you so much, but I cannot tell you how counseling has changed my life, my husband's life, our marriage. I always used to think counseling was for people who had problems, And I remember right before we got the boys, someone suggested that we do a marriage counseling session. They were like, you are about to invite chaos and crazy and unknown into your life. It's different than having a baby. All of those things are true, but you're inviting the messiness that someone else has created to invade your home. And I remember being almost offended and defensive, like, how dare you? You don't know my marriage. You don't like. And we had and have a great marriage, but it helped us going into to know that we're a team, and it was really life-changing for us. And so it helped us to understand our worthiness in Christ, but how our marriage was a beautiful picture of Christ's love for us and Christ's love for our children. And so it really made a huge difference. And we often will kind of find ourselves in a tense spot, like, oh, we need counseling again. But it really is a powerful thing. Another thing that might cause you to compare yourself to others is unresolved hurts or wounds from your past. Someone spoke something into you and you've held on to that. I told you guys, people told me that I was bossy. And it sounds funny that, my nickname as a kid was Miss Bossy Boots. And it's funny, but as an adult, it's hard for me to put that down, and that's not who I am. We actually had someone, in our early stages of marriage make a really hateful remark to Charles about how his wife wore the pants in the family and blah, 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 because I was a leader and because I ran my own business. And so those types of things, people can say things that we hold on to, and we start to personify those in our life, and that makes us compare ourselves to others. Well, I own my own business, but she doesn't, and, her husband's leader, whatever. Her husband's leader at home. However that plays out for you, but unresolved hurts and wounds from our past can make us compare ourselves to others. Another one is trying to figure out how good we actually are. The fourth is trying to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. When we compare ourselves to other people, we're really not comparing ourselves to other people. What we're actually doing is comparing our ideas about ourselves to other people. We're not actually taking the real authentic self, we're taking our picture of ourselves, which we are our own worst critics, correct? And so we're taking that critical view of ourselves, that idea that we have of ourselves, and comparing it to other people. And then we're using our observation about those people to validate our pre-existing ideas about ourselves. If you think about it that way, you've never really compared yourself to another person in your entire life. You've only compared your idea about yourself to another person. And then the last few years have added a whole nother level to comparison and a whole new level of abstraction to this process in the form of social media. We compare ourselves to other people. We're just comparing ourselves to certain versions of other people, the only aspect of people that we are permitted or allowed to see. I'm not saying that you should put garbage on social media. That is not what I'm saying. But you are comparing yourself to what you're seeing of other people. We're comparing that blooper reel of ours to someone else's highlight reel and judging ourselves against that prettified image. It's not news, you guys know this, but it is worth remembering. People's digital selves are not their real selves. No matter how much time they spend on Instagram, no matter how many stories they make, or how many times they use the word authentic or use their hashtag no filter in their pictures, it is still a highlight reel. That's why comparing yourself these days feels so much heavier and weightier than it used to. You're comparing your idea about yourself to another person, but you're also comparing your idea about you to someone else's idea about themselves. It almost sounds insane when you say it that way. A huge chunk of life is really just ideas comparing themselves to other ideas. And we're not actually comparing ourselves to real people. Second, when we compare ourselves to other people, we're usually just confirming the ideas we already had about ourselves or that others have helped us to form. So we're looking for validation of, I am really bossy. Charles really is henpecked. This I really am a terrible. We're just looking for validation in our own junk. And so either your comparison will artificially boost your ego, well, I'm better than that, or it will temporarily make you feel superior, making you feel superior to the people you're comparing yourself to, or your comparison will unearth the vulnerabilities you might not want to face, leaving you exposed to familiar feelings of anger, envy, resentment, and fear. How do you trash it? Because we want to get rid of this. Number one, seek inspiration from genuinely authentic people. Those who show and share more than just a highlight reel. Seek inspiration from authentic people. Number two, ask others who are further along in their journey about their journey. Because I promise you it doesn't look as pretty as the end result. The process along the way is where the growth happens, but we often compare our beginning to someone else's middle or someone else's accomplishment. The third is choose gratitude. A grateful heart and comparison cannot dwell together. 4, give back to others. Give your time, your money, compliments, kindness. It'll remove yourself from yourself and allow you to breathe into other people. Number 5, consider a social media detox. Unfollow is your friend. Limit your time on social media. Consider deleting apps that are creating that environment of comparison. Embrace the fact that you're not perfect, that the only perfect person who ever walked this earth was the Son of God, and you will never attain and you will never be, and so you might as well just stop trying. You are not perfect. Trying to be perfect is not the solution. So instead of getting down on yourself for your flaws, quirks, and imperfections, accept them fully as the person that God created you to be. And that leads into 7. Understand that you were created for a purpose by a divine and loving Father, and He delights in you. With your mistakes, with your failings, with your bumps and your bruises and your flaws and your extra 5 pounds, and all of the things that we're so hard on ourselves for, He delights in you. Tell yourself a better story. The story you're telling is not one of empowerment, strength, and optimism, and if it's not, then tell yourself a better story. Remind yourself that you have done the best that you could, and learn from it, and move on. The third chrysalis that we're going to trash is worry. And this is one, by God's grace, that I won't say that I never do, but nothing like I used to. As soon as I say I've mastered this, so I don't want to say that. So I want to humbly say that I used to define myself as a worrier, and this is something by God's grace that He has allowed me to have victory over. So let's define worry. Worry, to give way to anxiety or unease. Give way meaning like give control, okay? Anxiety or unease, to allow one's mind to dwell on difficulty or troubles. Difficulty and troubles happen. Anxiety happens. Unease happens. But we choose not to dwell on it, and that releases us from worry. You know me, gotta have scripture. Philippians 4:6, do not be anxious about anything. That is not a suggestion. In everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, there's the gratitude, let your requests be made known to God. Philippians 4:7, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. Matthew 6:25-27 and 34. Therefore, the words of Christ, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow. Let tomorrow be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. And then 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your anxieties on him, for he cares for you. A day of worry is more exhausting and more deflating and more demanding than a week's worth of work. A day of worry is more exhausting than a week's worth of work. And 97% of the things, I don't know who made up that statistic, I copied it off of Google, but 97% of the things that we worry about don't even come to fruition. Worrying doesn't take away tomorrow's troubles, it just robs today of its peace. Worry is using your imagination to create something you don't want. That's profound, you guys. Worry is using your imagination to create something that you do not want. We don't worry about the good stuff, right? We don't think, oh man, I might win $1 million. What would I do with all that money? Oh man, like we're not thinking about positive things that are happening to us. We're worrying about things that we don't want to happen, and we're allowing our imagination to run away with it. This is the phrase that allowed me to conquer worry or begin the process of conquering it. And someone said it to me just in passing in college. And if you guys ever hear something and it literally just stops you dead in your tracks and you almost have this out-of-body surreal moment, that's what happened when this friend said this to me. Worry is visiting a future without God. Is God present in the past, the present, and the future? Yes. Does God know the future? Yes. But he is present right now, right here, today. Worry is visiting the future without God. We don't know what's going to happen, and God does not exist in our future. He knows our future. He exists in the future, but that is not where he is present. He is present in the present. And worry is visiting the future without him. Worry doesn't stop the bad stuff from happening either. It just stops you from enjoying the good things. It doesn't just affect your mental health either. Statistically, worrying affects your physical health as well. So how do I know if I worry? You don't sleep well. You can't shake off an emotional upset, and instead you keep replaying it over and over and over and over and over again. You might feel resentful, and you experience tremendous guilt. There is actually a genetic component to worry. Did you guys know this? Like a little bit in your DNA. So if you are a chronic worrier, you may have a parent, sibling, aunt, uncle, grandparent who obsessively worries as well. People who come from divorced or broken homes are 70% more likely to have generalized anxiety disorder characterized by chronic anxiety, exaggerated worry, and tension. You also may have been raised by overprotective parents, And then you may tend to be an overprotective parent yourself. How do you trash it? Well, you're going to set aside 15 minutes of worry time. You're going to allow yourself 15 minutes to just worry about catastrophic things that are probably not going to happen. You're going to write down your worries and you're going to analyze them. Is my list productive or unproductive? Productive, I can take action now to eliminate or lessen the worry and fear. If it's unproductive, it's something I cannot control or do something about, something that hasn't even happened. How can you trash it? Number 2, remember it's never as bad as you think it will be. Anxiety or worry is all about anticipation. The what-ifs are always way worse than how you feel when something actually happens. Worriers tend to worry about things that even if they happen, they could actually handle it. Worriers are actually really good at handling real-world problems. Because they probably already way overanalyzed and thought out how this could play out, and then it ends up not being as bad as they thought it was going to be, which means they prepared themselves for it. Another way you can trash it is get your blood pumping through exercise. And one of my personal favorites is expose your worry to the light. By letting your big worry out into the light and talking about it with someone that you trust and is close to you, it becomes a whole lot easier for you to see the situation and the issue for what it actually is. Venting for just a few minutes can actually make a big difference, and after a while, you might really start to wonder what you were worried about in the first place. Sometimes the other person only has to listen as you kind of work through the situation out loud. At other times, it can be very helpful to have a trusted friend ground you and help you find a more practical and useful perspective on the situation at hand. If you don't have anyone to talk to at the moment about the worry that's ping-ponging back and forth in your brain, go back to the journaling, write it down, and then really analyze it. Getting it out of your head and reasoning about it with yourself on a journal, in a journal or on your computer can help you to calm down and feel free. There are a billion more behaviors, but I think that those particular those four are probably the ones that stop us the most in our Mary Kay business. Procrastination, the comparison game, there's only 3, and worry. Yeah. Those are the 3 things that stop us dead in our tracks in this business. And so hopefully I've given you some tangible ways to overcome some of the most common behaviors that do not serve us well in our business.